I didn't do that. All right. As a Fulbright scholar, she spent 7 months in Asia studying housing policy and design. John Friedman and Alice Kimm Architects practice now encompasses sustainable design and digital fabrication with a level of aesthetics that has been recognized nationally. They were cited as the Architectural League of New York's Emerging Voices, and they have won a National AIA Honor Award. Among the plethora of Los Angeles AIA awards, both the Los Angeles Design Center and the Ehrlich Residence have now earned Decade Awards. That sort of tells you how old we are. Sorry. Okay. Alice's work can be seen on the website world-architecture.com and in the Phaidon Atlas of Contemporary World Architecture. You know your friends are doing well when they have projects in a prestigious coffee table book that you can't even lift. So the one with the little suitcase handle, that's the one. So please, the AIA credits for anybody who wants it, you can sign up on the clipboards in the back. I'd like you to please welcome our USC Visiting Associate Professor and mother of 3, Alice Kimm.
I'm not going to use the mic.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, they need it for the video. Can you stand
Oh, okay. What do I do?
you can put this on the podium and
Okay. Yes?
Can you hear her?
All right, well, I'm just going to, can you hear me? Okay. I actually don't like using microphones, but thank you very much. Nancy and I have known each other for a long time. We were classmates in graduate school in architecture. She remains one of the smartest people I have ever met in my entire life. So if you have chances to take her classes or whatever, I hope you're doing it. I am also happy to be here because John and I have actually had several graduates of your programs come through our office, and so it's sort of nice to be able to put them into context, sort of know where they came from, and it's been really a pleasure and very impressive to see what's going on here at the University of Oregon. So I'm hoping that I can take back some reports back to USC and see if we can start to kind of crib some of the ideas about what you're doing here. But for those of you who do not know Los Angeles very well, or for those of you who know a little bit about it, you might or might not know that LA is the home to many examples of great domestic architecture. So if you look at this slide, you're looking at houses by Frank Lloyd Wright, John Lautner, Rudolf Schindler, and Richard Neutra. Now, this very rich tradition continues to today, but it's sort of expanded to encompass building types of all scales and sizes and programs. And so we have, Frank Gehry, Disney Hall. We have Morphosis, Eric Owen Moss, Hadjits and Fung. And then coming down to practitioners in their 50s, we have Neil Denari, Daley Genick. You probably know most of these names. And then I sort of did this decade thing. So practitioners in their late 40s or mid 40s include Lorcan and Larry Scarpa, Clive Wilkinson, and SPF. So there's a lot of really interesting work going on in Los Angeles. And one of the interesting things is that now there's a sort of younger generation of practitioners in their 30s who are coming up, and whose work really encompasses fully the digital tools that are out there for use. But one thing that I would say is sort of different with respect to how they use these digital tools is that much of their emphasis really is on performativity. And so I think that's sort of it's a bit of a generational shift, and it's certainly spurred by what we see going on in the world today. So John's and my practice falls within the trajectory of practitioners in their 40s who have been trying to really build. Our first projects were completed in 1999, a little bit more than a decade ago already. We actually included 3 projects in South Korea. So I'm not going to talk about them, just show them briefly. This is a 50,000 square foot golf club outside of Busan, South Korea. This is a same scale public swim center in a man-made new park in the city of Ulsan, which is an industrial city, again, in South Korea. And then finally, in the city of Seoul, in a very commercial, trendy, kind of cacophonous neighborhood, is this small commercial building that we did for a client who was the distributor of Coca-Cola in South Korea, and so she wanted something a little bit more hip, a little bit more fun. But really, while we were doing that work, what we were really trying to do was to build up our contacts in Los Angeles and to really begin to build up a practice there. So if you look at this map, it sort of tells you what we've done for the last 15 years, really, since we started practicing together in 1995, 1996. The red dots are actually projects that we have completed in the greater Los Angeles area, and that's what I will concentrate on now. We worked on a range of program types that includes houses, housing, public schools, private schools, commercial renovations, and university buildings. And I would say that our sort of concentration is really on the creation of meaningful public space or social space. And when we use the term social space, it is a very deliberate thing because we find social space in private programs such as single-family residences even, and we're always looking for ways to create spaces and environments that will kind of catalyze productive interaction between people. And so whether we're working on an academic university building or we're working on a single-family residence, we're always sort of looking for those kinds of opportunities. The last point I want to make before getting into the work is that if John were here and we were both talking to you, we would probably be switching the talking duties back and forth. And we do that because it's indicative of the way we work. We really do work in a collaborative way, not just with each other, but with those people in our office, and basically pass the work back and forth, whether we're looking at models or digital models or drawings. And really, there's kind of one rule in the office, which is that we all have to be happy with the work before it goes out the door. Sometimes that can take a very long time, and we have to keep people waiting. But that's sort of the unspoken rule in the office. So, and that we feel is also kind of very illustrative of the kind of a new paradigm of collaborative working that we're finding in practice today, because of the emphasis on environmentally ethical practice and sustainability. We are finding more and more that our collaborations with engineers and other types of specialists is really occurring from the very beginning of any design process. And this is really, it's really been kind of an amazing transformation of the way we work to kind of go through this with some of our more recent work. And it's also probably the largest reason why I decided to go back and start teaching at USC, which is going through some pretty strong efforts right now to begin to integrate building sciences and technology into the design curriculum. So it's a very interesting time right now. So I will move into the work. I would say that if you have to pinpoint some things that sort of run through all of our work, there are a few things that I can say we emphasize more than others. One would be a research into materiality with respect not just to performativity, but also with respect to the sort of emotional affects and associations that different materials communicate. So this will always be the case. Materials will always evoke certain feelings and associations in the people who use the spaces. The second thing is the creation of spaces that are very fluid and dynamic, and kind of an exploration of form in a very sculptural way that are activated both by artificial as well as natural light. And you'll see why I talk a lot about artificial light in a minute. A third emphasis is a very careful analysis of sight. And sight can take on many different meanings, as you all know, in your own work. And I would say that sustainability is also a very strong emphasis in our work. And then finally, more and more recently with our institutional clients, the need to sort of establish identities for them has become very, very important for them and for us. So this project is the first thing that we sort of made in Los Angeles. So while we were working on those larger projects in Korea, in LA, we were generating much smaller interiors projects like this one, which happens to be a nightclub in Santa Monica. It's called Club Sugar. And it's a project that we consider very significant in shaping the way we think about materiality in space. And that is why I'm showing it, even though it's actually a decade old now. The nightclub as a typology was actually very interesting because when you're working on projects with no real context, no exterior views, no natural light, no strong clues from outside to tell you how to orient any elements of the design, you really have to think carefully about how materials, colors, and artificial light can combine with program to sort of instigate or instigate an idea for the project or move a project forward. So in the end, for us, it really became the materials with all of those memories and associations that we felt in this project and others really had more impact than form. So nightclubs, if you think about it, are all about seeing and being seen, about narcissism and voyeurism. So we wanted to sort of reinforce and intensify those activities, but kind of in a little bit of a critical way. So what we did was develop a palette of new plastic materials that had all kinds of different optical qualities. So reflectivities, translucencies, transparencies, colors and textures. And our thinking was to try to present and represent the body in as many different ways as possible. And also to create kind of a experience of space and environment that would change every time you came back and tried to use the space. So you can see that we covered the existing concrete floor with a glossy black epoxy, which sort of disappears and people sort of melt into it. We introduced elements such as the stainless steel curtain that you see here, which sort of begins to distort the image of the person on the other side. We began to look at polycarbonate to create what we call a tunnel, which is basically a space that's dividing the bathrooms. You can see the bathroom doors beyond from the dance floor. And then this is a sort of a stainless steel bench. And some of these ideas and forms and ways of working with materials kind of kept being used in later projects, which you'll see. So for the bar, we faced the front of it with a vacuum-formed honeycomb plastic that's usually used in the aircraft industry, and then chose a 2-inch thick slab of clear acrylic for the top so that patrons could actually see the legs of people that they were talking to or perhaps wanted to talk to through it. But then we went and balanced these harder materials with softer ones, such as the drape you see here, and this brick wall. The buildings are actually existing masonry buildings, existing brick, but we actually, another kind of just inside thing, we sort of faced the back of the bar with fake brick veneer just to kind of continue that material dialogue. And then here is a close-up view of that polycarbonate tunnel wall. And then you can see kind of also clear and colored acrylic were used for the bathroom walls. And then this is a view back down to the bar. This is actually a view from the corridor into the bathroom. So you're actually outside the bathrooms looking in through these clear doors, and you can see the door handle on the lower right-hand side. And again, here we were sort of playing some games with perception. You can imagine people lining up outside the bathrooms, and then the people who are inside the bathroom spaces kind of being very self-conscious, but at the same time sort of enjoying that attention and not quite knowing what to do with it. So it just became a very interesting experiential conversation that we started with the users of the space. And then in the women's bathroom, where you would definitely most expect a mirror, we kind of took it away right in front of where you'd be doing your makeup and just exposed the existing brick wall. Sometimes we feel like, you have to be allowed to play a joke once in a while. You have to have a sense of humor as an architect, just to lighten things up a little bit. So, but that project really became a sort of stepping stone to the way we would work on larger projects. And so while Club Sugar is a good example of a very internalized adaptive reuse project, this next one had had more far-reaching implications with respect to the way we would deal with urban space. So this project, which is the rehabilitation of these two very dilapidated warehouses, as well as that parking lot in between them, became the first phase of a project called the LA Design Center. The client for which is a now very good friend named Francisco Pinedo, who's a Mexican entrepreneur who grew up in South Los Angeles and started a furniture manufacturing company and wanted to create a space in South LA that would draw people from all over Los Angeles to basically new showrooms. And what many of you who might not know LA again very well, South LA is actually one of the most depressed and relatively dangerous neighborhoods in Los Angeles, but it's also the second largest, or used to be the second largest hub of furniture manufacturing in the US. So a lot of the manufacturing has now moved to Asia or China, India. But South LA is, it's always kind of been a stronghold for furniture design, which we had no idea either. But one thing that, or two things that we saw as the challenges of this project, number one was, how do we create a positive and dynamic image for this complex while not creating any kind of unwelcome foreign presence in this particular neighborhood? And then secondly, how do we take advantage of the beauty that we saw inherent in the structure of these old buildings? So those were the two things that preoccupied us the most. So our solution was to kind of take these old buildings, clean them up, and then layer them with a set of kind of light and differentiated heterogeneous materials that would sort of together provide a set of new clothes for the buildings, but sit very lightly on them so that they would kind of seem both permanent and impermanent at the same time. So you could have the feeling that they could be taken away at any moment, but they still at the same time give the project the identity that our client was looking for. So as you can see from the diagram, we first introduced a polycarbonate screen, same stuff that we use at Club Sugar, and they are being held up by a set of seismic columns that were already in place when the building had been retrofit for earthquake. So we looked at the cues that the buildings gave us to begin with, and we used these cues to sort of generate our new additions. So the screen is supported by the columns. They are dimensioned and sized to hold photovoltaic panels at a future date. We used the columns also to create regulating lines across the parking lot, which became the banding for the hardscape and grass strips that you'll see in a minute. And then we introduced a set of wood screens on the opposite side. And then finally, we hung this kind of fabric canopy over the entire space. So the result you can see here is that main courtyard space. And clearly, again, the kind of early experimentation of projects such as Club Sugar really benefited us in terms of materials and ideas. And in fact, we sometimes joke that this is our outdoor nightclub. The space has become a pretty large public event space, which is used for many different functions and parties and galas. The AIA actually helped one of their annual big awards galas at the LA Design Center. But one thing that we were really struck by was how significant to the end result of the design the fabric canopy is. Because LA, you think about sunshine and palm trees, but what you might not realize is that that sun, that light, the sky usually has no clouds in it, and so it's always kind of unchanging, and there's a little bit of monotony to it, and it's usually more gray than blue. So what the fabric canopy does, aside from giving the courtyard a sense of intimacy and scale, is it actually starts to create shadows that move across the space throughout the day, and so it really brings kind of a dynamic quality to the space that we really appreciated. So here's a view from the other side, looking to the back. This is a view of that polycarbonate screen, which wraps around and swings around in front of the building with some applied graphics, that can be removed at any time. We did add one new column to hold up that corner. And then here's a view of the sliding gate. The gate was a huge dilemma for our client. He didn't know if he wanted a gate. He was like, I really want to be open to this neighborhood, but on the other hand, this is South LA and I have to worry about security. So our kind of compromise solution was to make a very sturdy fence and gate, but one that nonetheless was extremely transparent. So this is just some more detailed shots of the front entrance to one of the buildings, which becomes the headquarters of Cisco Brothers, our client's company. And then on the interior, we actually removed 2 bays of the existing second floor structure to create a double height foyer atrium that houses a stair up to the second floor showrooms. For the stair is made out of steel and plastic. And again, you know, plastic, we love plastic. It's light, it's clear, unlike glass, which has that green edge and that sort of weight to it. And then up above, we added this sort of floating platform to create a special little showroom area inside the main showroom space, but it actually covers up a loading dock below, which has a raised floor, which actually raised up a portion of the second floor. So it's actually covering up or taking advantage of an existing condition. And then this is the other side of that screen, and you can see the main showroom. And you know, really, it was about looking at what we were given, which was this beautiful masonry building, this beautiful wood ceiling structure, which was covered by 40 years of gray paint when we got there. So we basically sandblasted it all and pretty much just left it alone. We added 2 rows of skylights, some lights, light fixtures, and then other than that, we just let it kind of sing on its own. So moving to some residential work. I would say that if the previous 2 projects I just showed sort of emphasize that interest in materiality and the construction of, again, what we call social space, this house really illustrates something that can be described as more of a love of pure space, activated by natural light. And I think that you will see that in a second. Our client for this house, which is located in Santa Monica, California, and I'm sorry I don't have an overall site plan, but this is about 17 blocks up from the ocean in a really, really beautiful neighborhood. And our client grew up in LA, went to UCLA, was like a senior class president or something, and so he was a real LA person, but then he moved away. He moved to Asia and he lived in Hong Kong in a very small apartment. And so when he decided to build a house back in Los Angeles, he decided that he wanted it to be kind of a refuge. And he also had 3 other requirements. First was that he wanted the house to be sustainable, but he did not want to see any of the sustainable technologies at work. So if we were going to put a photovoltaic system in the house to power it, he didn't want to see the photovoltaic panels. So that was a shame, but that was one of his requests. The second thing was that he wanted the largest garden possible. And the third thing was that he wanted a lot of security. So at the same time that he wanted the house to be very open to a large garden, he also wanted to kind of create a very secure home. So again, a little bit at odds with each other, these goals of his. But what we ended up doing, if you look on the first floor plan, was to basically place the garage here and then wrap the public spaces around it. What ended up happening then, and that had a lot to do with the different code and setback issues, but that allowed us to have the largest L-shaped outdoor garden space that we could. This is an office space, so it has its own access to the garden, side garden. This is a koi pond, and then this is a larger kind of garden that fronts onto the living room, dining room, and kitchen. But what we were not happy about was that in this planning, we ended up with a kitchen in the northernmost corner of the house. South is actually this way on a bias, and so this is the northernmost corner of the house. And so the challenge spatially became, how do you manipulate the section and the plan to begin to bring light into that farthest northern reach of the house? And so we began to think about opening up what we call the diagonal void through the house, both in plan and in section. And through these, what we call kind of this light monitor at the southern corner of the house, we drew light into that northernmost reach of the house. And you can see that a little bit more in the section. This is actually cutting through that diagonal void, and shows you how the stair creates a double height atrium, and then warm air is vented through these skylights, and then the light is kind of coming in and really hitting that kitchen space. So, and then these are sort of some of the sun analysis process that we went through to look at really how that sun moves through the house to the northern corner during 3 times of the year. So this is a view of the house as it was completed. By cutting back that corner and creating that sort of light monitor thing up there, we created what we felt was a really nice kind of reciprocal urban gesture to the corner, the street corner, which is fairly prominent. And we didn't want to make a mansion or something very bulky on the corner. So this also allowed us to sort of dematerialize the mass of the house at the street corner. This is a view head-on from the western, kind of the southwestern side. You can see it's pretty solid to keep out the sun. The materials are painted cement board, plaster, and stainless steel garage doors. So they're all pretty eco-friendly. But there are a few places where we did use wood, and one of them is you'll see these screens kind of weaving their way through the project, and then the front door, and the second floor of the house, and the stair. And so that wood is all sustainably harvested, and it was just used where we really felt we would get the most out of the materiality of it. I show the mailbox simply because it's sitting in the middle of this drought-resistant landscape. There's a gray water system hidden in the landscape, which takes water from the sinks, etc., and irrigates the property. So this is a view from the inside. Again, natural light. We studied with Rafael Mineo, who, if there's one thing that he really understands, it's how to manipulate natural light through skylights, and he always taught us that light from multiple orientations is going to give you the best effect, because the light just kind of comes in and bounces around and really does amazing things. And so we always try to introduce light from as many different orientations as possible. And it really also just opens up spaces for you. So this is, again, it's a view of that. Looking back, you can really get a sense of that so-called light monitor. Here you can actually look up at the source of the light and see the sky. And then here's a view through to that kitchen, and then a view from the garden into the living room and through that public space sequence. This is a view of that garden facade, which is much more planar given its orientation on the side. So master bedroom, you can see up on the second floor, there's a big sliding door that can pull over the large opening. There actually is a glass guardrail here. You can't make it out really, but it's there. But when the door is completely open, you really feel like you're up there amongst the trees. And so he really loves that feeling. And then, since we are relatively obsessed with bathrooms from our nightclub and bar experiences, we designed the master bathroom to kind of contain this sort of shower from which he can actually watch the joggers down on the street below, but he's protected by the presence of another sort of screen element. And then finally, this is the guest bathroom, and sometimes we kind of like to do a little art directing ourselves just to have some fun. So we moved from that house a few years later to just one other house I'll show you. Is this one, which, while it has many sort of spatial similar kinds of qualities of space and the manipulation of natural light, it's very different from the previous house in one important respect, and that is in the way it deals with its context. If you think about the typical suburban house here, usually has a pretty impersonal front door and then a kind of a big private backyard, but our clients actually sort of challenge us to open the house up more to the neighborhood. They really wanted to feel and participate in the community in a very emphatic way. And so we got rid of the backyard and the front door. The front door is now here, and then you end up just with this large outdoor space, and the various rooms of the house really are kind of oriented towards that corner and that street. So there are ways that they can close off rooms when they want to for privacy, but really, our clients, they're really just outside or inside. They're always sort of interacting with their neighbors. I just find that to be pretty interesting. So this is a view from the street, and then inside the wall, you can see that even the kind of painted treatment of the cement board, again, cement board siding, begins to dematerialize the mass of the house, and that we began to play with kind of the ideas of transparency and the relationships between different rooms and the outside. Even at the second floor, the bedrooms actually wrap around this large roof terrace, which is like a second living room. And the kids, they hang out here, their bedrooms are here, they hang out here, and they call out to people on the street, and they kind of have a good time with that. So the interior spaces are a little bit more sculpted than the previous house. Again, this has a lot to do with this particular clients. Erin, the mom, basically, she can occupy her office. She's a landscape designer and did the landscape design for this house. She can sit here, but she can look through this transparent bookcase through to the living room, call out to her kids who are on the opposite side of the house, and kind of enjoy the transparency in that way. So, these are just some more views through the sequence of public spaces of that ground floor area. And then looking at the stair, again, you can kind of see that emphasis on bringing in top light, bringing in natural light from multiple orientations to get the quality of light that we were looking for. And this is a view of the upstairs and the bedrooms. So, oops, that's another house, which I'm not talking about, so I forgot to take that out. Sorry. So in this next project, which is in design development now, it's on hold probably for about 9 more months is our guess. There's sort of a ramping up of scale again, back to the scale of those earlier Korean projects, and even bigger. So this project is for Claremont Mckenna College, which is part of the Claremont colleges. You might have heard of them. It's a group of colleges about 40 miles east of LA, nestled at the foot of the San Bernardino Mountains. There's Claremont, there's Harvey Mudd, there's Scripps, Pomona. It's a really, really nice kind of community. Each college has sort of its own emphasis, but they all sort of work and collaborate together. So the project is actually for a new approximately 100,000 square foot athletic and fitness and athletic center. If you look at this rendering of the campus plan, you can see that the main sort of academic quad is here. Our site is actually through this major circulation path through this thing called Parents Field to here. So our building will replace this existing gymnasium here and have a strong relationship to the track and a swimming pool, etc. So if you look at it a little bit more close up, you can see that the site is actually pretty constricted. You're basically hemmed in by the swimming pool, a road, and track and field. And because our program is actually much larger than what's existing in that gymnasium, we knew that what we did would have to be fairly compact. So our proposal, this is the first floor plan, basically creates a plaza which relates to that Parents Field axis over here on the diagonal, and then extends that plaza into the lobby to create what we think of as a sort of indoor plaza with streets emanating from it, and from which you can really see the various activities that are going on in the building. The main activity, or the main space, is this Varsity Gymnasium, which can actually hold seating for up to 1,500 or more people for big events like, President Obama came to talk here, they would try to cram the whole school into this gym. And then there's a 2-story fitness center here, a weight room here, and then locker rooms here. So the relationship to the pool and the track, all of those are sort of made through the circulation paths between. So, and if you look at the section, the main gymnasium, the floor of it is actually buried another level below grade, so that when you actually enter the gym from that lobby floor, you can see it better here, you are actually looking through the gym out beyond, and you get a view of the mountains. So you can kind of see that here. And it really begins to create a space that is more formal, and by formal I simply mean a little bit more, not as casual, just it has a little bit more, has a little bit more oomph. But again, for us, the really important thing was that kind of capturing those views to the mountains beyond and bringing in the natural light. So going up to the second floor, our main goal was really, this is the second floor, but we don't want it to be the kind of overlooked part of the building. So there's a secondary recreational gym here, which sits on top of the weight room. It has a very strong visual connection to the varsity gym. And there's a separate kind of landscape stair that takes you up from that outdoor plaza up to the second floor, and you can actually come in and you can actually enter the varsity gym and occupy those upper bleachers or filter down, or you can go directly into the rec gym. And you can also access the upper level of that double height fitness center and look down on the ground floor. So again, very transparent building. These sections, once again, give you some idea of those relationships that we were looking for. And this is a view of that lobby. So you can see how transparent it is and how you can really get views of all of the main spaces of the building from the lobby, as well as views to beyond. Look at this. So looking at the building as kind of from its external view, we wanted to create, the building is compact, but we wanted it to be relatively athletic and sort of muscular in spirit. And we have begun to play with the kind of development of the skin as kind of a breathing, perforated skin that can start to talk about or make references to the way the body sort of behaves during athletic performance. So this is a eye-level view, and then close up the other side facing the access road. And then as you turn the corner to the track, you have a different sun orientation, and so we've introduced vertical fins there. So, so that project is ongoing right now, and you can probably sort of guess that we have begun to incorporate more into our work kind of the digital tools out there. We do most of our modeling in Rhino, but it's really this next project that I'm going to show which allowed us to really expand our understanding of digital design as well as fabrication tools. So this next project is it's the interior renovation of a 3-story historic academic laboratory building at Caltech, and it was for the Graduate Aerospace Laboratories of Caltech, which is abbreviated GALCIT. So, and GALCIT is a super interesting group of people. What we didn't realize when we started this project was that aerospace engineering kind of encompasses everything from cancer research at the cellular level to looking at, you know, space structures or large rocket ships. So there's this whole range of research that takes place that is a little bit, I mean, it's so broad. It's kind of like, you know, we were just sort of at a loss as to how to begin the process of conceptualizing the project. But these are images of some of the departmental research, which we found to be really beautiful. Again, not at all sort of what we thought of in our stereotypical envisioning of aerospace engineering research. But more importantly, scientists all over the world would probably recognize these images. So the kind of attitude that we had towards the research and the research imagery was very important to the department, and how it was expressed in the design was very important to them as well. So if you look at the front door of the building, I think you get a sense of the sort of historical nature of the building, and one of the things was, one of the sort of challenges again was, how do you create a dialogue between this existing structure and the new insertions that we place into it. So we ended up deriving our formal language for this project not from any local physical context as much as the notion of flow. And you see kind of a little diagram here of little, and this is basically showing what's happening to kind of a little object as it's kind of pushing through perhaps a wind tunnel. And this building, actually, I should have mentioned at the beginning, used to be occupied by a double-story high wind tunnel, which is a huge container that objects get hurled through, and then basically the behavior of those things are analyzed as they move through or collide with other things or whatever. And this large wind tunnel had been used to test every single airplane that was built since airplanes were invented until, I think, earlier this century. So when the wind tunnel was removed, it left a huge void in the building, like a double-story high void, and so the building was not very stable. So we were actually brought in, and kind of the umbrella program for the project was actually simply a seismic renovation. So, but programmatically, looking at the idea of flow, which seemed appropriate since almost all aerospace engineering involves studying flows, which kind of harkens back to looking at how materials behave under differential pressures, whether those materials are fluid or solid. And so we took that as kind of a broad conceptualizing base from which to start. And what we ended up doing with this set of very disparate spaces that kind of occur throughout this three-story building was to design these sort of insertions, which take the form of suspended ceiling elements and wrappers that then kind of come into dialogue with the existing structure and give each space kind of a distinct identity. So if you look at the first floor plan, this is the front door of the building, and you came in and we actually created a brand new lobby, which is very transparently connected to this new laboratory. And the laboratory has contained within it the remnant of the double height space. We actually ended up filling in a lot of it, but we left this portion double height to allow experimentation with larger structures. And our two major insertions were this ceiling element and then this kind of wrapper wall, which wraps that double height space. So this is the end result, and we worked with the manufacturing company Freeform out of Utah to create kind of this three-dimensional ceiling topography, which is broken up into panels and then fabricated using vacuum forming and CNC milling processes. So the whole thing kind of becomes the new signifier for the department, kind of their identifying element, and also becomes a lantern within the space. And this is the big window into the double height laboratory space. So just some more views of that. There were other elements such as donor walls and director's portraits, and a big kind of chalkboard wall that is placed there so that after lectures, which are given in a lecture hall directly adjacent to the space, you can come out and kind of dialogue using the chalkboard. And that chalkboard gets used all the time. So this is just a worm's eye view, which I think begins to show kind of how we dealt with existing structure. We love the old concrete structure. It was all covered up before. So we kind of took all the gypboard off, painted some of it out in the ceiling area, but just sort of left the rest of it exposed. These are just some working drawings, shop drawings, and diagrams showing how the sort of panels are suspended, very low-tech means, and then how in some of the panels, the middle layer of the resin, it's a composite resin made up of 3 layers, the middle layer has been kind of cut away to allow light transmission to happen. So, and you can see, like, this is one of them. So we worked a long time on coming up with what we felt was the right sort of dot array to perforate and peel away that middle layer to allow the light to come through. So it's a really interesting process working with Freeform, both during the design as well as manufacturing and installation period. And then when you enter that 2-story high lab, we were asked to create what the professor called a small museum for his artifacts. He is an engineer named Sergio Pellegrino, who is known as the father of the unfolding space mirror. So he works a lot with structures that fold up and expand. many of them, well, all of them almost, I mean, are just quite incredible models that are made by hand. And he sometimes works with architects to generate some of these things. And so that became kind of another element of the project. So this is a view you can see back out into the lobby from inside. This is a new kind of big loading dock door that we had fabricated using glass. Previously, it was a solid door. So you can imagine this building was just very dark and dingy before. This is one of the weather balloons that he experiments with. A view of that double height space. And then moving up to the second floor. I'm just going to move through these very quickly now because the kind of way the processes in which we designed and worked pretty much remained consistent throughout the building. Second floor interactive space. No vacuum forming here. This was all steel, conventional steel stud construction using curved steel tracks. But in the end, formally, you end up with kind of the same sort of dynamism. And so it was interesting to be able to contrast the traditional versus newer forms of construction. This is the sort of origin of that. We worked with a professor in the department who does a lot of research on the heart. So these are views. This is a view on that second floor from that space into that double height lab below, downstairs. And then this is the teaching lab that actually wraps around that double height lab. So you can see how transparent everything has become. Just a view. And then at the end of this floor, the second floor, kind of we were almost done with construction, and then another donor came forward and provided like $300,000 to transform this old conference room into a new kind of combined conference and archives display center. And so at this point, we were told that this room would really be very much dedicated to the work of Theodore von Karman, who was the kind of founder of the department, but also considered the father of modern aerospace engineering. This is one of his seminal discoveries, diagrams, just called the von Karman vortex. And so we were asked to really literally transpose this diagram into something. So what we ended up doing was creating a ceiling made out of felt, and we chose felt for its acoustic properties because people actually defend their theses in this room. And so the room really needed to function acoustically in a superior fashion. So we worked with the professor to get the form right and all these sort of these layers. And it was very easy to construct. We just put up a kind of a skeleton layer of steel studs and then laser cut plywood forms and then hung the felt down from them and then simply bolted or screwed the plywood forms to that steel framework that we had up there, painted it all out so you can't really see it, and then what you're left with is this half-inch industrial strength felt. And you can kind of make out the felt panels are actually just riveted together, stapled basically. So it was another kind of interesting process. And then we designed a conference table that doubles as a display table. So that was that space. And then finally, upstairs, an entirely different thing again. We were asked to kind of honor the donor for this area of construction. His name is Alan Puckett, and he was one of the primary engineers of the Delta Wing airplane, which, if you can imagine what a stealth fighter looks like, it basically has the triangular bat wings. And we kind of found a relationship between the forms of the Delta Wing and the kind of existing column capitals and knee braces. And so we started to play off of that and again created, inserted a ceiling structure and then a kind of a wrapper wall here, which becomes the display wall for honoring the life of Alan Puckett. So this is that kind of curving wall. It's a this space was kind of a landlocked little pocket of space that, they basically just asked us to make a conference room, to make it usable somehow, to create a little conference room and display area. So that's what we did. So that's that project, and I'm just going to end. I'm running out of time, aren't I? I'm going to end. I'll quickly go through this last project, which is an installation that we completed last month in Mexico. It was basically It was a project that was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and organized by the City of Los Angeles' Department of Cultural Affairs. So it's really a public project for the City of LA. And it was to design a guest of honor pavilion for the 2009 International Book Fair of Guadalajara, which is this annual event that attracts like 600,000 visitors during the course of about a week and a half to Guadalajara. And the guest of honor, in this case being Los Angeles, also brings in tons of speakers and entertainers and artists and fine arts. And so it was just this kind of incredible event where filmmakers and a little mini film festival and the Getty Museum and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art and Otis College all took shows down there. And there were about 50, 55 writers who traveled to give talks and sit on panels. And kind of we were, and the Guest of Honor Pavilion became kind of that central space where everybody sort of flowed through. It was about 20,000 square feet, very low budget. And really the charge was to show off the dynamic, quote unquote, the dynamic nature of cultural life in Los Angeles. Well, what really does that mean? So when we first applied for this project, it ended up being kind of stiffly competitive project to get. We asked an old friend of ours named David Yulin, who's the LA Times book editor, to kind of be on our team. And we were kind of looking at this anthology that he had gathered of that encompasses writing about Los Angeles from many different writers. And he, in this book, talks about how so much of LA's history has been recycled into myth, and how LA has become a symbol of the country's most expansive dreams as well as its most streamlined technologies. I'm quoting him. And he talks about the movement of writers into LA in the 1920s who all came to work in film. And so just kind of the more and more we started to look into the history of Los Angeles, we really just felt there's just no one way to describe Los Angeles. Putting up, plastering the space with billboards is not really the answer. Neither is it sustainable. It's very wasteful. And, how can we really express what we feel is the spirit of Los Angeles? So first we had to define what that spirit was. And for us, it really started to become one of innovation, that we felt that a lot of these sorts of the arts and the landscapes, the ecologies, the technologies, all of these things really have in common the spirit of invention and innovation. We really felt that sort of qualified LA. And so we began to conceive of the city of LA, somehow portraying it as a city of innovation. But to do so not in a literal way, but in a way that was more about drawing users in and having them interact with the space in some way. So what we ended up doing was to create an environment that contained really 4 distinct elements. The first was we used a Voronoi patterning device to kind of divide the space into zones that were flexible, and you could move through them, occupy them, hang out. And then we dropped in these flexible display and seating modules. These are from the very early presentation that we did. And then we created an interactive author wall, this 100-foot long by 40-foot high wall that would showcase the names of over 200 writers who had contributed to the understanding of LA. The booths actually were inspired by kind of that ubiquitous LA coffee shop. And then finally, in the space above our heads, we decided to hang what we call these idea bubbles. And they came from the idea that innovation, you can't have innovation without a set of ideas, and idea is something that always starts in somebody's head and then becomes expressed and manifests in its physical form. And we were thinking of Sergio and his weather balloons at the same time, and so we began to develop these bubbles, these balloons, and thinking about how we could actually have them manufactured and engineered to work in concert with the geometry of the Voronoi patterning that we had set up for the zones below. So they kind of evolved into this sort of set of elliptical shapes, which had to be specially engineered because they were not symmetrical on 2 axes. So the design kind of evolved in this way. and we added certain other elements. But the end result was this. And so we ended up with 5 bubbles. And what we did to then portray Los Angeles in a bit more detail was to commission 10 independent films, each of which sort of touched on a different theme of Los Angeles. And those films became projected on these bubbles. And so when you're moving through the space, the bubbles above your head, and this one is actually 10 meters long, so it's like a 30-foot long balloon, like hovering, the bottom of it is like 8.5 feet above your head, so you really feel the weight of it. But you know, by using external projection, we were able to begin to portray some of the life of Los Angeles and all of its various facets through these films. And then at the same time, create this interactive element whereby you stand in the central platform and operate this giant touch screen and can begin to manipulate this humongous wall at the other end of the building, or at the other end of the space. So this was our kind of way of trying to portray a city without saying something definitive about it, but rather just kind of doing it through the quality of the space and the interactivity. So, and that's really what I wanted to end on. I think I've talked too long already. So thank you very much. Yeah, if there's any questions. No questions? Thank you. Yes.
You talked a lot about Los Angeles, and I'm just kind of curious how you wound up there. If they were so tied to where you started to practice there.
No, it actually really was just kind of getting out of grad school, and for me, it was like I just wanted to have a very different experience from the East Coast where we went to grad school. So I just thought I had some really close friends in LA from college and high school, so it really became, let's go to LA and see what happens. So it was really, you know, learning about LA through working in LA. So, any other questions? Okay. Oh, one more.
Yeah, I really love this idea of like the experiential interactivity between users and these elements in your building. And I was wondering if you like heard any feedback from people in the building, like what has really worked for them or what they really enjoyed.
Well, I will say that this one, which is this project, which was the most overtly interactive one, apparently was a huge success. And you know, the kind of all the local people of Guadalajara who were there, they really felt like they could relate to the ideas and the technology, and because the technology was made so accessible, that you know, that sort of level of interaction for them really worked. So it was a really super positive experience. The Caltech project is also very successful, but it's very, there's a little bit more of a divide against some of the people who are just, you know, it doesn't fit within their conventional idea of an academic facility, and so they had a little bit of trouble with that in the beginning, but they've apparently gotten very used to it. But for the most part, people really say that they identify with the way the forms somehow have managed to interpret their research in a very broad sense, and so they really appreciated that. But I would say that this project, which is about interaction, really kind of worked really well. So, any other questions?
I want to thank Alice for a wonderful lecture, and I just wanted to remind you that we have more lectures coming. On Thursday, February 4th, Roger Sherwood will talk in conjunction with the current exhibit on the Getty sketchbooks. The lecture will be at 7 p.m. in this room. Then we have a series of Wednesday lectures. On the 10th, Allison Orr will talk about her traveling fellowship, traveling into Vietnam, looking at material efficiency. On the 17th, Suzanne Croker-Slenner of Making Cities Livable will speak about lessons from the